Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Arva Rice. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the interim chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I would like to call the CCRB's public board meeting to order. Would the rest of the board please introduce themselves, starting with those that are here in present in person? Joe.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph. Okay.
We know you can talk.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joseph Puma. I'm the City Council representative on the board. I have to say, this is our first meeting in New York City neighborhood for nearly, I think, 3 years. So it's just really nice to be among community members and on Staten Island in particular. And I'll pass it on to my next colleague.
Esmeralda Simmons, I'm the representative for the public advocate. I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and I'm delighted to be here and with this turnout. Thank you for coming.
My name is John Darsh. I'm the executive director of the CCRB.
Demetrius Carolina, mayoral appointee, Staten Island. Glad to have you in our home.
Thank you so much. And we will have the members of the board who are joining us virtually, if they could introduce themselves, starting with Corinne.
Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be there. Corrine Irish, mayoral appointee, and I live in Harlem.
AU, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying to start this video up. I think that's, yes, A. Hogan, appointee from Queens, and I reside in Queens.
Thank you. Do we have any other board members? I do not believe we have any other board members online. Thank you. Seeing that we do not have a quorum, we will push the approval of the October board minutes to next month. As you can see, and Joseph already alluded to, we are not in our traditional boardroom. Instead, for the first time in over 2.5 years, we have relaunched our efforts to bring the board meetings to the community. And so this is an opportunity for people in this neighborhood to have easy access to our board members and share their experiences and ask us questions. I want to thank particularly Reverend Carolina, board member, for allowing us to be here at Central Family Life Center and allowing us to use this space. We hope to visit more neighborhoods in the coming year. This past month, the CCRB launched a week of awareness about the agency's new rules. Our outreach team hit the streets and hosted events in all 5 boroughs in efforts to educate New Yorkers about their rights when interacting with police officers. They specifically focused on the new unit investigating racial profiling and bias-based policing and educating New Yorkers on how to identify bias policing, what the protected classes are, and how to file a complaint if it happens. Due to their efforts, the CCRB reached over 1,000 people last week, and we will continue our educational efforts moving forward. The Racial Profiling and Bias-Based Policing Unit joined outreach in their efforts to educate New Yorkers, and they have already started to receive complaints. The last few board meetings, the issue of staffing, particularly for the APU, has come up. This continues to be a top concern for the agency, and I thank the mayor's office for their commitment to promoting both safety and justice and ensuring that the CCRB has the resources it needs to effectively complete its work. Despite being incredibly short-staffed, the APU has continued to work diligently and has held 4 trials in the last week and has 4 more scheduled for next week. Thank you so much to the APU for doing all you can to push these cases forward. We will now hear from Executive Director John Darsh. John?
Thank you, Chair Rice. I want to start off by taking a moment to remember the CCRB's own Marcelino Smith, who passed away a few weeks ago. Marcelino was a core part of this agency for 12 years and was often the first face people saw as they entered our agency. I want to thank Marcelino for his incredible service to the people of New York and for his years of friendship to all of us at the CCRB. Marcelino, you will be missed. The agency has received questions about the increased timeline of investigations over the last few years. The increase in time is due to complications from the pandemic, and our investigators have done an amazing job at clearing the backlog. We have reorganized how we request data from the NYPD and work closely with the department to optimize how we share documents in our staff. A further effort to reduce timelines is that our board members have given more and more of their time to the agency to increase the frequency of panels and help close investigations more quickly. In the second quarter of this year, investigation timelines have already gone down 20% from the first quarter. One case that the public has continued to inquire about is the trial of the officer who killed Delron Small. This case has been delayed for over a year now while the CCRB waits for the results of a motion to unseal the documents from the officer's criminal trial. We're still waiting for the court to issue a decision. It's cases like this that show why the CCRB needs an exemption from sealing statutes so that we can effectively investigate and prosecute cases of misconduct. Next Sunday, November 20th, is the Transgender Day of Remembrance. The CCRB is here to support the transgender community and can do so more effectively now with our new unit investigating bias-based policing. Gender, gender identity, and gender expression are protected classes under our new unit's jurisdiction. If you believe that you have been stopped due to bias or racial profiling, you should file a complaint. Our office is open for walk-in complaints, but it is also possible to file complaints online at nyc.gov/CCRB complaint. That's nyc.gov/CCRB COMPLAINT, or by telephone by calling us directly at 1-800-341-2272 or simply calling 311. If anyone wishes to file a complaint right now, we have 2 investigators with us today ready to take any new complaints. Kamani Dunkley and Key Bus. Kamani and Key, can you raise your hands? There's Key right there, and Kamani's way in the back. Amy O'Sullivan from the Civilian Assistant Unit is here as well. Before we get started, some ground rules for this afternoon. The public session, if you're online and wish to participate, please use the raise your hand feature and we will call on you to make a comment. Also, comments are going to be limited to 4 minutes maximum, whether you are online or here in person. I want to thank the staff for their hard work in getting this set up so quickly. I want to thank again Dr. Carolina for letting us use this amazing space, and for all the people who work at Central Family Life Center for hosting us. And thank you to everyone who's with us online, but especially for this great turnout today. Thank you very much for coming to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, John. Do any members of the board have any questions of the executive director? Questions? All right, we will have a presentation from our Director of Outreach, Mr. Jahai Rose. Jahai?
Hold on one second. Do we need to move this?
Thank you very much, Chair Rice. I echo the sentiments of the chair. Thank you all very much for being here. My name is Jahai Rose. I'm the Director of Outreach for the Civilian Complaint Review Board. I'm just going to provide you a brief overview of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. The CCRB is the nation's largest independent oversight entity over the largest police force in the country. The CCRB investigates, mediates, and prosecutes complaints of misconduct alleged against NYPD officers of the NYPD. The CCRB is governed by a 15-member board. You've met a few of the board members here. 5 are appointed by the mayor, 5 are appointed by the New York City Council, 3 are designated by the police commissioner, and 1 is appointed by the public advocate. The chair is jointly appointed by the New York City mayor and the city council. The CCRB can accept complaints about misconduct. We have the jurisdiction to take allegations that fall under 4 categories. That's force, abuse of authority, discourtesy, and defensive language. FADO is a helpful acronym to remember what our jurisdiction is. Just some brief information regarding the Right to Know Act. The Right to Know Act was a law that went into effect in October of 2018. This law impacts how police officers engage with members of the public, where it relates to stop, question, and frisk encounters, sobriety checkpoints, and other police encounters. So with some exceptions, officers should be identifying themselves by providing information such as their name, badge number, rank, and command. With some exceptions, officers should be notifying you of the reason for the encounter, including informing you of your right to say no when requesting consent to search a person, vehicle, property, or home. Officers should, depending on the circumstance, offer individuals a business card that has information about the officer. Also, the other side of the business card has information regarding how to file a comment and or complaint about the interaction between you and that officer or any other officer for the matter. Civilians can request these business cards in any encounter. This is a copy of what the business card looks like, front and back. There are various ways to file complaints with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, as mentioned by our Executive Director, John Darsh. Some of them include filing the complaints online, which is the easiest way. You could go to nyc.gov/CCRB complaint, or you can feel free to call the CCRB's hotline at 1-800-341-CCRB, also 1-800-341-2272. Remember, if you see footage of misconduct on social media or on the news, you can feel free to file a complaint, even if you weren't there in person. The handle for the CCRB is typically CCRB_NYC. Other ways to file complaints with the CCRB include calling 311, everyone's favorite number. In addition to coming to the CCRB's office, that'll be at 100 Church Street in Lower Manhattan on the 10th floor. You could also contact the CCRB on social media. You could DM or direct message the CCRB on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can feel free to send an email to the CCRB as well, or you could send a letter to the CCRB at the same address, 100 Church Street, 10th floor, New York, zip code 10007. Complaints can also be filed at any police precinct. It does not have to be the precinct where the interaction took place. Police officers are required to accept complaints in the precinct. You could also request a complaint form and a self-addressed envelope. The CCRB is hiring. There's various positions that are open with the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Feel free to go to nyc.gov/careers. Type in CCRB if you're interested at a position with the CCRB. If you have questions or you don't see a position that we mentioned here available online, feel free to also send the CCRB an email at careers@ccrb.nyc.gov. So we are going to be joined virtually by one of the alumni of our Youth Advisory Council, YAC, Thomas Rose.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Rose, and I'm a member of the CCRB's Youth Advisory Council. Just providing an update that we'll be having our 4th annual Youth Summit on Tuesday, November 15th at 5 p.m. virtually on WebEx, the platform we're on now. This summit is a great opportunity for young people across New York City to directly share their experiences with policing, identifying problems within their communities, and they'll recommend solutions to public safety and police officials. This summit will have a panel of various representatives, youth representatives that is, from across the city, some within our own YAC, and they'll share their experiences and insight on youth and policing. If you're interested in attending, you can register via the link that we'll share in the chat, and we'll hope to see you there. Also, we invite all 10 to 18-year-old New Yorkers to apply to the CCRB's YAC class of 2023 today. Applications will be accepted through November 30th, 2022, and this link will be also shared in the chat. So do send to anyone you know who might be interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Lastly, if you'd like to request a CCRB presentation, outreach presentation, feel free to contact the CCRB's outreach unit at outreach@ccrb.nyc.gov. Thank you all very much. I return it back to you, Chair.
We will now hear from the Staten Island community leaders. Thank you so much for joining us. As a reminder, we're going to ask you to keep your comments to 4 minutes. And I would also like to acknowledge former City Councilwoman Debbie Rose. Who is We want to thank her for her ongoing support of the CCRB, and it's a moment of personal privilege also an urban leaguer. So we're very excited to see you here tonight. Thank you so much. All righty. So for our community leaders, Jahira, are you going to call the first speaker? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. We'll first be hearing from Andres Garcia, who is a co-executive director of El Centro del Inmigrante, and he will be speaking in person.
All right. Can you hear me all right? Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andres Garcia, co-executive director of El Centro del Inmigrante, the Staten Island Immigrant Center based in Port Richmond. I appreciate the time and opportunity given to me to speak on behalf of the immigrant communities of Staten Island. And although there is plenty of diversity throughout the island, our work at El Centro is focused on the North Shore, which is home to many families who speak many different languages, who represent many different nations and cultures. This year more than ever, we recognize the need for our local law enforcement to have language access. Every single New Yorker should be able to get the help they need without worrying if they will be understood or taken seriously. One of our members was subject to verbal and emotional abuse by her landlord. The day she was threatened with a kitchen knife was the day she once again decided to call the cops. That same day, officers declined to arrest the woman, who is now in custody facing charges because responding officers couldn't understand our member and her landlord spoke English. We are now working with the district attorney's office, who got our member a humanitarian visa to further assist in their investigation. So when I was told to consider how the CCRB can build trust and increase awareness about police accountability in our neighborhoods, I wondered how much effort towards genuinely used and helpful language access resources are available to both community and police members alike. With your experience, with the other question being what I, based in my capacity and my experiences, consider to be a major police community relations concern. My biggest concern, which may be exemplified by our members' experience, which I've just shared with you, and of which I've personally seen time and time again, is that, of course, not meaning to generalize, but some police aren't taking crimes committed against immigrants and people of color seriously enough. I've had so many meetings with members who have been assaulted, who were victims of hate crimes, victims of wage theft or workplace abuse, who had the courage to call the police for help, who were ultimately ignored, or worse, had their statements taken, received police slips, but when followed up on, cases were never filed at the precinct or information was put in incorrectly. I want my staff, my members, and my volunteers to believe that when they call 911, they will be heard. So, when considering what the city can do to improve police community relations in our neighborhoods, I believe the city can begin to hire more officers who look like our community members, who speak the same languages, and take the defense of our families as seriously as I imagine they would their own. It's hard to imagine, lastly, how such systematic obstacles may be hurdled, but it is my hope in my being here for the first time that I may see the fruits of change from our efforts over time with care and intention. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me from here or give me some mic back? So I'm pretty loud. I might not need to move it.
Click here to see if we can hear them and you guys at the same time.
Perfect. Can you hear me? Excellent.
The interpreter is speaking. We're not able to hear you very well. Thank you.
So I think language access is something that, frankly, every city agency needs to do better at, especially the CCRB. And it's something that we're working on, in addition to working on making sure that the NYPD takes its responsibilities under language access seriously and responds to community needs. So I think one of the things the speaker mentioned was making sure that the police force looks like and represents the people of our city. But that's also true of the CCRB. And so one of the things one of the reasons why we make it such an important part of Jahai's outreach presentation is to tell you what jobs are available at CCRB, is because we want people who live in this community, who call it home, whether they've called it home for 30 years, I guess now I would say for me 50 years, or for a year, to feel like they can come to us and work there. And so I urge everyone to go to our website, see what jobs are available, and see. I think we're a good place to work, and I'd urge you to see if there's a fit for you with us. And language access is something that we look at not only on the individual cases where people file complaints against members of service for a variety of reasons, dealing with their obligations to provide language access and to treat people fairly, but it also may be areas that fall under the jurisdiction of our new unit, the racial profiling and bias-based policing unit. And so our intake unit knows to look for those issues and to see if it needs to flag them to go to the racial profiling unit.
Hira, who's next on the list?
Next, we'll be hearing from Gabriella Herbst, a Tottenville High School student and Staten Island resident.
Oh, she's here. So you need to.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gabriella Herbst. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a senior at Tottenville High School. We are in a crisis currently with a lot of gun violence and people dying of senseless crime, and not much is being done in our communities. In my personal experience, right now it's hitting really close to home because just like recently, we had a boy who was 14 years old shot in front of our school due to lack of police presence outside. This could have been avoided, and he's a baby, 14 years old, imagine that. He was coming back from getting food to go to football practice, and then he's shot because somebody just comes and decides, oh, let me just shoot somebody senselessly. Imagine his parents' reaction to that call. Your child shot. I hope nobody here has to experience that trauma. This could have had a completely different outcome with more police presence, but due to lack of communication between the community and police, we're dealing with a problem. There's a lack of trust within police because a lot of people aren't feeling heard when they talk to police and when they communicate concerns. I want to acknowledge a program that's done in the city called Build a Block, where some precincts communicate within their communities what's going on within the precinct, and people are able to tell their concerns. I think that should be mandated because if more people are able to be heard and their concerns are taken into account, a lot more people would feel safe in their communities. I also think that police should be, sorry. A lot of people feel uncomfortable around police because they hold such big authority. And a lot of police mean good and want to support and help their communities, where others take advantage of their authority. And to me, I hold a lot of perspective within this because not only am I a part of NYPD Explorers, my father's also an officer, and I'm also a part of Youth Impact Program. And I've been able to receive a lot of perspective within all three. My father has been an officer for 20 years. Not once has he had to use his gun against a person. He says if he can keep a situation de-escalated, he would. A lot of people who hold this authority need to realize their bounds and not overstep to make other people feel less than. I think I feel like holding workshops where police learn about communications and how to reduce tension with people and maintain good relationships with people is important so that when they're in the community and helping or trying to help, they understand what people need. Holding a good relationship with the community is important for people because if they don't, the people will not trust them and they will not be able to communicate concerns. Suspension from their job does not do anything. If they're just sitting at home not learning anything, nothing's improving and everything will continue to stay the same. They need to learn. Within workshops, they'll be able to learn how to effectively communicate and how to make good relationships within their communities. Within Youth Impact, I was able to learn about restorative justice and help youth who were arrested. And instead of them going through court cases, they're able to come to us and help, and we're able to help them. One story I'd like to reflect on is a young person who I worked with when I was 14 years old. In order to maintain confidentiality, I will not mention this young person's name, but the police came to them with a warrant for their arrest. They did not effectively communicate what the young person was being arrested for, and they did not communicate to their parents what they were being arrested for either. So this caused tension and caused stress and anxiety on the young person, causing them to feel unheard and stressed. Do you see what's wrong here? Police are not effectively communicating with us. We need to be heard. We need to know what's going on. The lack of communication is pushing us away from police. So I guess what I want to say here is we need to be able to talk to police. We need to be heard. Communication needs to be connected between us as the community members to the police and vice versa. We need to know what's going on within our community. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Herbst, thank you very much for your very thoughtful comments. There's one issue that you brought up that I wanted to explain a little bit more in depth to the folks here and on the internet, and that is the issue of discipline. And sometimes training is an appropriate discipline for a member of service who commits misconduct. And when the board substantiates allegations against a member of service and the matrix indicates that training is the right remedy and the right penalty to be imposed for that misconduct, that is what the board recommends to the police commissioner to make sure that the officer is trained appropriately so that things can be improved. But that's not always the right penalty to be imposed, the right discipline to be imposed on a member of service who has committed misconduct. And so there are penalties from forfeiture of vacation days to suspension days to being fired from the department. It all depends on what the officer has done wrong and their history as a police officer. And so we take all those factors into account when we recommend the discipline that the department is supposed to impose and the department takes those things into account when they are actually issuing the discipline. And the reason why the board is only recommending discipline is because the board does not have the final authority over police discipline. Under the current state of the law, the police commissioner is the final arbiter of all matters of police discipline. And so all the CCRB is empowered to do is make a recommendation. Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
Did any other board members want to make a comment? Yahira, were there any other members of the community that are scheduled to speak before we open up for public comment?
Yes, Chair. We have 2 more speakers. Next, we'll be hearing from Mike Perry, Program Manager from True to Life.
Am I good? Good. So thank you, CCRB. Thank you to my brother Jahai for the invite. Thank you. I just want to start by saying there's a couple of questions that I'm going to answer that was sent to me to prepare a statement for, so I'm going to do that. But first, I just want to open up by saying I actually stand here as a victim of police brutality when I was a little bit younger, and also a person who has been falsely accused by the NYPD. Where I was later vindicated and had to sue them. You know, so I just wanted to share that to you, share that with y'all, right? So I think one of the first questions, and I want to bring it into context for the people that are in the stands, because I don't think it's really clear about what's happening. There's a couple of questions asked. One of them is, what should the CCRB do? What should the CCRB do to build trust? One of the things that I wrote was, I feel the CCRB should better promote awareness of their practices and what it is you actually do. The community is aware of the CCRB, but some are not fully aware to what extent you represent the people on police accountability, right? Our community has trust issues. So I would say promote the power that you really have or don't have. And we would hate, because one of the things in our community is controlled opposition. And we're not oblivious to that. So we want to make sure that the CCRB is really representing the people. So the next question that I was asked is, what is your experience on the ground? With your experience on the ground, what is a major police concern with community relations? So I answered like this. I, for one, have great relationships with the leadership in NYPD, right? On Staten Island. I have friendships, working relationships with the leadership here. My working relationships allow me to be able to advocate for youth, which is beautiful. To be relieve less sentences and just advocate for them for diversion programs instead of prison, which is beautiful. But my solid relationships don't mean anything if the energy and respect doesn't resonate to the people, right? I could be cool with NYPD and certain law enforcement officials, but if it doesn't resonate with the people on the ground, then it ain't really, it's not really a real thing. I would gladly trade in my relationships with the NYPD so the community is able to feel respected and humanized, right? The last question was, what can the city do to improve community police relations in your neighborhood? First and foremost, sensitivity training for all NYPD officers. Sensitivity training, I don't know if that's a thing, but from the ground, that's what they need, because they're very insensitive to our people, to our plight, and what we've been going through all our lives. Another thing that I actually advocated for in front of NYPD was trauma training for the officers. Weekly trauma training for men and women who are, they have the task of protecting and serving the people, but what about their lives? What about what they're going through? Are they being treated for what they're going through in their lives, the trauma that they've dealt with before coming police? I feel like trauma training is very, very important, because you have men and women in the NYPD and officers all across the world who is not being treated for their childhood trauma and trauma alike, right? They are mostly white officers in Black and brown communities. We are who are not aware of our culture and history. That needs to change. I'm aware that there are good-hearted men and women who wear that uniform with good intent, and I always salute and take my hat off to them, always. but I'm not sure how we'll be able to uproot the culture of the NYPD that has historically been a vicious cycle of mistreatment for Black and brown people since I was born, and I know before you were born. Sensitivity, weekly trauma training could be the start. Thank you. Yes. Yes, true to life. We are anti-gun violence organization. We are ran out of Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. We've been doing the work for almost 10 years. We are part of New York City Crisis Management System. I've been here from the beginning. My staff is here, and we're doing the work, trying to save lives in our community. And being that you gave me the platform to say that, I want to share this. One of the things that we do, talking about the police accountability, right? We're anti-gun violence advocates. So when our people do something wrong, we go out on the highways and we let them know about themselves. We hold them accountable. We are looking for the NYPD to do the same. But when your people do wrong, go out there and put them on the line, holler at them, and make it a thing that they did something wrong, because we're doing the same thing with our people. Thank you. Thank you.
Could Mike Perry stay there? This is Board Member Hogan. Hello?
They can hear you, Mr. Hogan.
Okay, good. How you doing, Brother Mike Perry?
What's up, Brother AU?
This is Brother AU. I just want you to know I'm a member of the CCRB, representing Queens and City Council appointee. And I thank you for showing up. One thing, there's a young lady that spoke right before you that definitely needs you inside her school. She was speaking about issues that's going on inside her school as far as violence and whatnot. And your name was going to come up immediately after she finished speaking. So it was just the creator that brought you here. One of the things I want you to know that sitting with this board here, we are caught with the right intention to do and a whole lot of city bureaucracy.
Right.
And if the public wants to know that we have to continue to have these particular settings and meetings and really look at people who are doing stuff on the streets, because you know I'm on the street all day long, you know, and I'm also part of the, CMS, and been there from the beginning. What we have to do often is make a real surge in educating our public, the young people that surround us, to make them be one, politically aware, and also system aware, because the CCRB cannot do anything if those reports don't come in, because like we file complaints, our population file complaints, but we don't do any follow-up of it. And then there's a slow process of getting these cases looked at, not from CCRB, but from the NYPD. So I just want to work with you now, and I'm glad you came through here. And I apologize for not being able to make it this evening, but definitely let's work together in some of those things. And matter of fact, all those things that you're talking about, we'll take care of. My last thing, though, is that the police department and its concept of sensitivity training is really not too sensitive.
Right.
Sensitive, and so a lot of their training about sensitivity should be existing in the academy, where you would have members and leadership of the public that would join in that training at the same time they're getting it, so there can be someone that is very aware of what's going on the ground and the public that they're going to be leased out to. But again, thank you, brother, and good seeing you out there.
Good seeing you, Brother AU. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Willie Freeman. The police department has me out of Brooklyn.
Thank you. That was Mr. Willie Freeman. He is a
Yes, Chair Rice. Now we'll be hearing our final community member speaker is Luis Medina, a college student and Staten Island resident.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luis Medina. I'm a junior at John Jay College for Criminal Justice and an alumni of the Staten Island Justice Center. You guys can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now we can.
Okay. The Staten Island Justice Center, who have encouraged me to speak this evening. Since a large portion of my academic work focuses on the criminal justice system and how it interacts with the community, I'm thrilled to be speaking here today. The CCRB is a critical connection between the community and the NYPD since they hold the authorities accountable for their actions. On this subject, I'd like to explore a few ways they could foster trust and raise awareness in the community. I would like to start with them upholding their goal and ensuring the police receive the necessary discipline following a thorough investigation of a complaint. Recent data from the NYPD disciplinary records demonstrate that the number of CCRB cases investigated does not match the number of officers sanctioned. This implies that despite concerns, no systematic change is occurring. These statistics leave the community with no faith in the CCRB, ultimately leaving people to keep their interactions silent rather than filing a complaint that is more likely to lead them nowhere. Still, while the police should be held accountable for their acts, I feel like severe punitive punishment isn't the solution either. It must be done constructively to avoid repeat incidents. Devise effective means for the NYPD to discipline their officers, such as new mandatory training and classes. In terms of raising awareness, the CCRB's outreach should extend to all levels, the first being schools. I recall the CCRB having a representative visit my school, and it was comforting to know that I had an organization I could rely on to be my advocate against the seemingly invincible power. That outreach must be more frequent, and it should even trickle down to middle school and elementary school. Having discussions about justice and responsibility can enable future generations to have a sense of how they handle themselves in what could sometimes be emotionally charged scenarios when interacting with police officers or any other authority figures. To help the community realize the tools that they have, the CCRB should visit schools and talk to them about how no one is above the law, including the law itself. Speaking about this will make a difference. Starting outreach in schools will go a long way since it will naturally spread to students, staff, and even families. Furthermore, I suggest putting outreach graphics in public places where individuals are likely to encounter the police, such as parks, MTA transit stations, and with an emphasis on putting recruiting information in marginalized communities. Next, I'd like to express my police relation worries using situations I've had and heard about. My first example comes from personal experience where a friend and I had entered the train station and immediately after passing the turnstile, we were accused of fare evasion. Rather than simply questioning us, they approached us with a persecuting manner as if we had been convicted under jury already. Despite my friend and I promptly defending ourselves with me reaching to demonstrate I had an unlimited Metro card and it had just been swiped and my friend presenting his tap to pay statement, their initial reaction was to jump to allegations, ready to give a ticket. This accusatory tone immediately made us feel nervous and submissive to the circumstance. Although they eventually investigated and they allowed us to pass, they did not appear to be sorry for wrongfully accusing us and taking up our time. They made our lives feel insignificant in the moment. Interactions like this, where I've done nothing wrong, nonetheless make me anxious around the authority because I'm still afraid of being accused. My next example comes from a peer where he explained to me that his friend and there was an argument with an older man and it eventually got physical. When they fought, they panicked and fled, hoping that to avoid the consequences that came with facing the police. They were eventually detained, which resulted in the repercussions. But this confrontation with the police was not productive. The boys went back and forth and it led to a stalemate. These stalemates are very common in the neighborhood because the officers frequently use their authorities to make allegations rather than considering why a crime occurred. Transitioning from my concerns to some solutions. A way to fix this communication barrier is to implement communication trainings for both community members and for the officers. For officers, communication training needs to be embedded into annual trainings with new tactics being added periodically. Communities and demographics.
Oh, man.
Luisa, you cut out at the end there.
Methods are all aspects of the communication training that we should emphasize. Additionally, to match NYC's diverse density, we should introduce cultural competency. So we should get improved exposure training to help uplift the various communities. And on the other hand, community-focused training should be financed by the city and implemented through organizations such as the Staten Island Justice Center to create educational access points with community figures that people know and trust. These community-based trainings should include officers as well as those who have firsthand experience with them. I think it's important to start building a way to bridge the gap that divides the community and the police. These insights should provide individuals with a fundamental awareness of how to communicate with the authority and minimizing the stigma that pushes people to avoid the police in general. Thank you guys for hearing me today.
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
can I just address one issue that
Yeah.
Mr. Medina broke up?
Sure. I just wanted to thank him. For his comments and his personal stories that I think resonated with all of us, and his particular suggestion around education in schools. But go ahead.
But I think one of the things that Mr. Medina also said was how it's important for CCRB to get into schools. And it's something that we do focus a lot on. Jahai would be mad at me if I didn't bring this up, so I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of our outreach team, which is very small. And right now, there are only 5 people, including Jahai, who are out there doing that work. But we know how important it is to get into schools and community groups so that people can know that we are here and know about the work that we're doing. And it's not just, it also connects with what our first speaker, Mr. Garcia, said about language access. And the CCRB has been making a major push to make our materials available to different groups in different languages so that people from all communities in this city can access our services and use us as a way to make sure the police are accountable for the behavior towards those communities. Sorry.
Oh, no, please, thank you. Any other comments from our board?
I just want to make a quick comment.
Please.
I want to thank everyone for such salient points that you raised tonight. You do realize that it's been 2 years since the CCRB has really been in the community, and we will be in every borough. But I want to make a point as we are advocating on the behalf of citizens across New York City. The CCRB needs for our citizens to advocate for us as well. You do know that the common denominator here is that we get cases, spend a lot of time and energy on each case, and the board oversees the substantial cases, and then they are sent to the commissioner of NYPD, who has the final say. The way in which you can advocate for CCRB so that the substantiated cases can not only be heard, but effectively dealt with in terms of punitive results for NYPD is for either the city council and or the mayor's office to give CCRB much more power in decision making. That is a real way in which you can help us help our citizens. I am a Black man in America, and I am not spending my energy and time on a CCRB because I need another title or because I have some free time. I'm here because I believe in what we are doing, and I believe in you, the residents of New York City. But we also know that the power is in the hands of us, those of us who are voters and those of us who live in New York City. So, ma'ams and sirs, this is not an effort in futility. We are here because we want your voices to be heard. Help us help everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Reverend Carolina. We are now going to enter the public comment portion of the meeting. And I understand that folks have already registered, Yahira, so you will call on them to come and provide us with additional comments and suggestions from the public.
Correct. Thank you, Chair. First, we'll be hearing from former council member Debbie Rose.
Good evening, everybody. And I want to say thank you to all of you who came tonight to partake in this very important exercise in empowering this community to change police and community relations. I want to say thank you so much to the CCRB. I left office before I could say to you how much I appreciated the efforts that the CCRB had made and changes. It was really a good time. We invested a lot of time and effort as a city council in police reform and giving CCRB more authority. Fortunately, we were not able to get to the point where the CCRB had ultimate responsibility and power in terms of discipline, the discretion of what type of discipline should be meted out and carried out, giving ultimately the commissioner the final say. We worked real hard at that time to try to codify your authority. That didn't happen. So I want to first encourage you to continue to work with the city council and the mayor's office to actually make that a reality. Because as Dr. Carolina said, a lot of effort goes into determining the outcomes of the cases that are presented before you. And I have witnessed some of the work that you've done. And I find that you have done it with integrity, with the ultimate intent and intellect, knowledge of the law, and the outcomes that you have determined that should be meted out in terms of accountability for police officers is exactly what I think is right. You are the voice of the community, and the community is often powerless. So I think with all the effort that you put forward, that should be the end result, as opposed to just a recommendation. So I think I thank again Dr. Carolina for imploring the community to get involved. That would mean getting the public safety chair to hold a hearing again on what exactly the authority and the powers of the CCRB should be. So we need to do that. And so again, I wanted to thank you. I want to say that this is such an esteemed panel. To Dr. Esmeralda, she is a mentor of mine and the inspiration for a lot of the things that I chose to do in terms of this community. And you've always come out to Staten Island, and nobody else would. You know, everybody acts like this is Gilligan's Island. So, but I thank you for always, and Dr. Rice, you know, we go back to the Urban League, and you've always been out there fighting for the community. And it was a pleasure working with you, John. Many a night I called him, you know, really frantic about outcome and why we couldn't push something further. To all the CCRB members, I know how much time and effort you put into it, and it seems a shame that it would be in vain.
you put too much effort into it, and for it to just be a recommendation. In fact, that's what propelled me to become a city council person. I was on community board, and we just made recommendations about the budget and what needed to change in our community. And it was so frustrating to make recommendations that nobody followed or took up. So your mission is so important that it should have the weight and gravity of which, these incidents are approached. And I want to thank you. And as probably the bane of John's existence in terms of the outreach unit. It is very important. It saddens me when I find out that people still say, what does the CCRB do? What does it do? And so I fought really hard with other city council members to increase your outreach budget. I want you to continue that. Just because I'm not there to bother you the way I did, and we were only able to get what I feel was a paltry sum of money. And that when Jahar is out here doing the work, and I see him out here doing the work, then we have young people who don't know how to access the CCRB and not sure what your mission is. I want to implore you to continue, get that budget increased, use social media so that the community actually can put their hands on you when they need to. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you do. And I really salute you. It's not an easy job. And I want you to know, I did appreciate you. Sometimes it seemed like I didn't, but I did.
Thank you, Chair. First, we'll be hearing from Neil Berry, followed by Radiance Martin.
Not gonna be long. I just want to thank the CCRB too, because you do tremendous work. I've been doing this work for a long time around criminal justice. And I know the power that you should have. And I certainly know that the NYPD and its institution is not cooperating. So the authority that they have is too much. There's immunity. I currently work with an organization called VOCAL, which is Voices of Community Activists and Leaders. And we do a lot of work around mass incarceration and police performance. I'm from a point of view of the funding the police, not because only 4% of the crimes are violent. So where's the rest of the 96% of the budget going? $11 billion in our communities doesn't have any type of resources and any equity. So I'm for the funding, and eventually we'll have a reimagining of what public safety should look like, as W. Rose has said. So we're going to be fighting for qualified immunity, to end the qualified immunity. And there's legislation, of course. I'm about, legislation, changing the laws, because that's the basis of what we're going to have to do, is change the legislation to change the law. We got pretty lucky. The state legislation is pretty much intact for us to pass some laws, again, around bail setting and things like that. Because many of us, wrongful convictions, because the police officers have too much authority, and they have qualified immunity. They don't have to testify. Qualified immunity means they don't have to share anything. The information is didactic from the information. The young man talked about shared documents. They don't have to do none of that if they have a legal recourse to do that. We want to end that legislation to pass the ending of qualified immunity for government officials, correction officers, and everyone else. So we are on board with you. But there's legislation so that we can empower you guys to really do your job, because this is so important. The courtesy, professionalism, and the respect that the police officers' motto is not being handled. We have been, like Mike Perry said some really great stuff about the history of the police department, goes back way much more deeper than this. One day the history of it will really be told about what the actual function is. So we don't have that in our community. The trust is not there. We have to set examples. So we can maybe get civil suits against these officers, because right now, the official capacity of the department is who we sue. But we have to sue the officers and take that money from them. It might be a different kind of thinking. Like, they get sued by this individual if you put your hands on me or you abuse your authority. They don't have that now. They have qualified criminal. We need to set up where the law passed to sue you, even if I can't get the criminal complaint, to get the civil complaint against you. And that's what we're working on. So I'm just glad to be a part of this. And if you happen to need some help or support, both of New York is around. Take care.
Thank you so much for your comments. And John, do you want to introduce me?
Thank you for all your work, and I meant to respond to Councilmember Rose and say it was never a bother. It was never a bother. My son may have disagreed with that, but I never thought it was a bother. And one of the reasons why the agency now has a small budget to do public education is because of the efforts of Councilmember Rose, but also groups like Vocal New York and Communities United for Police Reform. A lot of the changes that Councilmember Rose talked about didn't just happen because of people like Councilmember Rose in the city council who were trying to do good. They happened because the people of this city and of this state forced it to be an issue that was then responded to by politicians. Mm-hmm. And so, like Reverend Dr. Carolina said, this isn't just a one-way street of what the CCRB is doing and telling you about. This is about how you folks can advocate for yourselves and advocate for the CCRB to be a better agency to serve you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well said. Yahira, do we have our next speaker?
Yes, next we'll be hearing from Radiance Martin. And as a reminder for those joining us virtually, if you would like to leave a public comment, please use the raise the hand feature. Instructions are in the chat.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Radiance Martin. I am a member of the public. I'm coming to you tonight as a member of the public, and I need an investigator. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say that just like Reverend Carolina, I have been an advocate for the CCRB for quite a while now, maybe about the last 4 years. I've partnered with the CCRB in Brownsville, Brooklyn, through the Brownsville Jobs Plus program that I used to work for, and I worked as an outreach coordinator and a community coach with them. And I work closely with Timothy. I don't know if he is still an outreach person for the CCRB, but that was my point person. That's who I used to refer people to when they raised any concerns. But as I mentioned before, I am here for myself tonight. I am in dire need of an investigator. I missed the October meeting, and I've been waiting for an entire month for this meeting. So if someone can give me, a person that I can talk to. I have a case that is not high profile. It's not provocative. It's not going to get media attention, but I believe that it is just as worthy as one that would. And I have already submitted a complaint online. I have not mailed anything, or I actually have called 311. But for the most part, I've submitted 2 written online complaints, and I haven't heard from anyone yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And please, just for the record, for everybody who's here, you do not have to wait from one meeting to another in order to make your complaint to CCRB. So I just want to be really clear about that. As John mentioned in the beginning of our meeting, there's people that are here at the meetings, but you can also make that complaint in any other way possible. And also, the cases that you all bring do not have to be sexy. They do not have to be front page. It's seriously, it's any time that you feel like that your fatal rights have been abused, and so you can bring that case to us. But I want to turn it over to John.
So I think it's important. Key, would you like? So we're going to have someone connect with you right now. who can speak with you. So, Yahira, is there a way for you to talk to Ms. Martin or to talk to Ms. Martin offline and then connect her with Key, who's standing right there ready to talk to her?
Yes, Radiance, I'll send you an email right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Next, we'll be hearing from Helen Settle.
Is Helen here or online?
Yes, she's here.
She's here. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm with the Staten Island branch of the NAACP, and I myself encountered an incident last night where two police officers put their hands on me. I was monitoring the polls. And I'm going to file two CCRBs tonight against those officers. I already met with the Board of Elections chairperson, Don Bosco, and told him what happened. Monitors and polls been doing it for years. And the officers there obviously have not been trained. I used to do sensitivity training with the young cadets coming out of the police department, and I think we need more of that. Because obviously they didn't understand what was going on. I'm 72 years old. I mean, all you have to do is say, you don't have the proper credentials, but I did have the credentials, and I've been doing it for years, and everybody in the polling sites know me. I go all over the North Shore. But I was forcibly pushed by a police officer out of the Carter Center. Was not allowed to enter. So I will be following. I have the two officers' name, and I said, you're aware that you're in the community. I don't care. I said, well, maybe I'll Inspector Casella. I don't care, call whoever you want, but you don't have any credentials. Nobody knows you here. I'm like, okay, what planet did you come from? Because everybody in Staten Island knows I do the polls every year. So, but anyway, I just want to say what we need more sensitivity training. NAACP we used to do it all the time. As the 120, we used to, Mr. Josie, who's our president, we used to go and do the sensitivity training with the young officers before they went out, on the patrol, and understand something. Because I remember specifically, I said to a young man, if you give an order to someone to move, okay, and they're complying with you and they're moving, but in their movement, they're calling you every name in the book. How do you react? I would throw him down and I would cuff him. I said, why? I said, why? Why would you do that? Because he's complying with you. You just don't like what he's saying because he's complying. So that's why I think, and then just looking at what's going on today, we definitely need more sensitivity training of the young cadets coming out of the academy. And so that's my suggestion to the CCRB, if y'all can, maybe push that to the powers that be, the mayor or whoever, the commissioner. I would definitely appreciate that. Thank you.
So if you could just wait a moment, we'll have an investigator reach out to you and bring you where they'll take your statement. And the other thing I want to point out is while it was good that Ms. Suttle has the names of the officers she interacted with, that's not required if you want to file it. It's one of the things the CCRB is good at doing is identifying officers. If you come to us and describe an encounter you had and where it was and tell us what happened, we'll then go about and try and identify the officers using police paperwork and body-worn cameras and other evidence that we're able to obtain to identify the officers so that we can continue an investigation.
Chair, was that directed at me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Next, we'll be hearing from Abu from Staten Island Immigrant Council, followed by Elom Guin.
Good evening, all. I just wanted to start first and foremost, just congratulating the panel for giving us such a good opportunity and a platform to express ourselves. And I think this is part of the process of what we call accountability. It's very important that you put the community, in the front line and to allow them to express themselves about the needs and also to measure achievement in terms of progress made by such an important entity called the CCRB. Because the CCRB can be seen as a watchdog, some sort of instrument, that will allow people to stay in their comfort zone in terms of complaint, with some city agencies. And I think we all stand for transparency, and transparency is not only, making sure that resources allocated, in different entity can be useful in the way where West but be seen. Many people think about CCRB, because I understand in the 80s, before even I come in America, because I come in US in 2001, CCRB was part of the NYPD, if I'm not, mistaken. And many people, when they come to complain, they think of, abuse. They think of, issues related to stigmatization, discrimination, and sort of. But I'm not here today to ask a question. It's just again to reiterate and to reemphasize the importance of such entity. And also, I read your report. I went through it because I'm very policy oriented, and there was a lot of findings, findings and recommendations made to the CCRB. It's one way to improve also what you're doing. Because I think city-wise, we need such entity also as an immigrant, and for instance, because I saw some immigrant leaders who serve in CCRB who run this. And when I go to their platform, all I see is human right, human right, human right, human right, right? And CCRB is an entity also that can really protect and allow people to stay in their, comfort zone to report. And report is not easy. And let me tell you that. Because sometimes people are surrounded by forces that will not allow them even express themselves when it comes to sexual exploitation and abuse. As a former United Nations, I work closely with some entities that are seen, that are always behind the scene, operating to make sure that abuse doesn't take place in that institution. And it's the same concept at the local, state, and federal. Now, one suggestion, if you allow me, because I know the time is ticking, I have less than a minute, is the largest room in the world is called the room of improvement. Education is key, and if you can keep the momentum right to raise awareness through this great organization we have in our borough, like the Family Life Center and some other organization, they can go on a regular basis, not to wait a monthly setting like this to educate our community, including the immigrant, because I'm pretty sure we have a good plan when it comes to equity, because we all stand for equity and we look forward to lead the equity plan of the CCRB. And again, thank you for your time and effort.
Right, exactly. I'm looking forward to that too, John. The equity report, just passed yesterday.
Yahira, did you have the name of the next speaker?
Yes, next we'll be hearing from Elam Green, followed by Chief Mpaka Prince Wallow.
Good evening, good evening. There was a lot said tonight. I do have a few questions, right? For the people, I'm speaking for the people of the community that I work in. I'm employed through True to Life organization. Who polices the police when there's not enough people from the community in here being educated on how to file complaints and go about that, right? For the individuals that do put in complaints, right? But it don't go far. How do they guarantee that the complaints go far, right? When you have a lot of individuals that are afraid to go to the precinct to make a complaint, or like I said, is not educated on the CCRB at all, right? These town hall meetings, I know that you said that it's been 2 years since, right? But when this town hall meeting is done, it should be done in particular neighborhoods in a certain town where those individuals can come in here and get educated on what to do or how to go about, making a complaint. That's pretty much it because there was a lot said, so I just had those questions to ask. Who does that? And that's it. No.
Thank you, Mr. Green, who brought the two issues of how do you reach folks who are either not educated in the process or too fearful to bring their cases to the NYPD.
So Mr. Green had two very good questions. Gwynn, I apologize. Had two very good questions. The first question is, how do we make sure people know that the CCRB is here? And clearly having community meetings like this, while important, is not enough. We need to do more to get out into the community and let people in different community groups know that we are here. One of the things that Councilmember Rose and her colleagues did was give us a budget to do some public education work besides having Jahai and his team go to individual groups and meet with people and one at a time educate people on CCRB, because we are in a city of 8 million people. And so if we are relying on 5 people to do public education, 30 people at a time, you're never going to have that critical mass that you need. So one of the things we've been doing with the public education money is trying to design media to used on social media, and then advertising to be put on the radio and television and in local newspapers and in different language newspapers so that we can get reach to folks that we won't be able to do no matter how hard the outreach team works. And then the second question was something that, you come to a lot of these meetings, you hear the same questions. This was a question I had never really heard of, so I want to thank you for bringing it up. Is if you are a person who has a complaint, how can you best ensure it goes far and that the CCRB can effectively investigate your complaint? And so the most important thing to do is file a complaint quickly. Because if you file a complaint late, we will still try our best to investigate it, but the more time that goes by, the less evidence we are going to have. Most stores that have surveillance equipment record over on a regular cycle, some as short as 3 days. I've never heard of anyone saving video footage past 7 days unless they get a subpoena saying, hold on to that footage. It's just so rare to have. And so the faster you file a complaint with us, the better we are able to gather the evidence that will let us reach a decision on the merits for your case. And that's really the best advice I would give someone is file quickly.
Yes.
I also love that question. Before I was on the CCRB for many, many years, I headed up a local civil rights organization, advocacy organization called the Center for Law and Social Justice. And when we first started, when we were flush with funds, but you know, the funding always creeps down to almost nothing at one point. When we were flush with funds, we actually had on staff one person that did nothing but file CCRB complaints with victims. So I'm going to tell you some of the things we learned from doing complaint after complaint after complaint. Number one is get the names and telephone numbers. First of all, badge, seal number, or the car, the number on the car, on the police car is very important if you can get that. It makes things a lot easier for everybody. Number two, any witnesses, get their names and the telephone numbers and ask them to send you the video that they took. Everybody takes videos now. Ask them to send you the video. Number three, come into the CCRB office and speak with an investigator or someone intake before you file your complaint. They can help you think of things that you didn't think of that may have been violations that you didn't consider, like a language violation, etc. You may not consider it a big deal. It's against the law. And the last thing to do is to make yourself accessible to be interviewed. I mean, setting a complaint in and then they can't reach you, or you're too busy, or you know the dog died. No offense to the dog, but no, you have to be available. You have to be available, and you have to be interested enough in your complaint to follow up and get them any other information that they ask for. And then finally, obviously, you do not need a lawyer. I'm not suggesting you get a lawyer, but you know, if you stay in touch with your investigator, you know, squeaky wheel. That's all I'll say.
Can I add one thing to what Esmeralda was saying? And that is the squeaky wheel was funny, and now I can't remember what I was going to say. Yeah. I'll come back to it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that little bit of practical information, as well as the policies and procedures. We appreciate that expanded answer on that question. Yahira, do we have the next person who's to present?
Yes, next we'll be hearing from Chief Paka Prince Walu, followed by Francia Evans and Rachel Uwala.
Thank you. Good evening, thank you. Good evening, panelists. As Councilwoman Degueros, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I represent the African community of Staten Island. We strongly believe that there is disproportionate arrest and incarceration of Black and Latinos by the NYPD, because it seems there is an abuse of discretion. Either it's because of deliberate profiling of these particular groups, because there are more of these particular groups in New York jails than any other group. So which means there is an abuse of discretion. Now, what I would like the CCRB to do or advocate is to make sure that every patrol vehicle in the city of New York is diversified. There should be African Americans there, Latino there, Asians there, in the same vehicle if it's possible. Because I used to live in London, and when they started to diversify the vehicles, indiscriminate arrest of people of color was reduced. So this is one of the ways in which we can be able to check and balance what the police officers are doing in our different communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for your patience. I know it's a little bit of time for us to fix, but it is so appropriate that you talk about the acceptance of African Americans and Latinos living directly.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
First thing was, thank you for his patience. It took us a little while to get to him. Thank you so much for that. And secondly, it was appropriate for him to bring up the issue of excessive policing of African Americans and Latinos because of the increased powers that the CCRB just recently was able to receive as a result of the work of City Council and the rules that just went into place. And so I wanted John to talk a little bit more about that.
So the new unit is up and running. We have been receiving complaints and have already started requesting information from the NYPD in order to process those complaints and investigate those cases. We've been meeting with civilians and reaching out to witnesses, and we're moving forward with those cases. In the past, if someone were to think they were the victim of racial profiling and felt that they were inappropriately stopped, whether in a car or on the street, or inappropriately arrested, the CCRB would look at the stop. Was there enough evidence for the officers to have stopped the individual? Was there enough evidence for the officer to have stopped that vehicle? Were those encounters done properly? But as soon as there was an allegation that the motivation for the stop was based on someone's race or ethnicity or gender expression, we wouldn't investigate that. We would send that to the NYPD and say, you guys investigate that. We're just going to look at the underlying allegations of misconduct. And that was something that was true when I first got to the agency. And as a bureaucrat, I understood that because it's much easier to look at a stop on the street and say, did this member of service have the requisite level of suspicion to stop that civilian? Than it is to say what was in the heart and mind of that member of service when they stopped that civilian. And our agency was very reluctant to change. I'm gonna have to file a CCRB against that bug. Was very reluctant to change our practice because it's much harder to do these profiling investigations. They're much more detailed and time consuming. But we got a lot of pressure from community groups, from people just like you here saying, no, you can't stop there. And staff got pressure from board members who would look at cases and say, no, we haven't gone far enough. We just dealt with the surface portion. There was clearly bias here that led to this stop. And the efforts of the community, of the people just like you, maybe even some of you, led people like Councilmember Rose to give the CCRB the authority to conduct these investigations. And so we've just started. And one of the things that's happened to me, in my personal belief, is I now understand that it may be difficult as a bureaucrat, and it may require us to do more work and take more risk. There is no agency better place to do it. And so I've come to embrace the challenge. And I think the people we have working those cases we brought on board Embrace the Challenge. And so if you have complaints that someone was stopped because they were profiled, then you know how to file a complaint because you've all been sitting here and listening to me and Jahai tell you. Go to an investigator here today, go online, Jahai will tell you the website, ccrb.gov/complaint. And then
NYC.gov.
Thank you. It's the one thing they make me remember and I couldn't remember it. I apologize to you all. And we will gladly undertake the challenge of investigating these cases and bringing justice on these cases.
We need to expand further.
So who's next up, Yahara?
Next, we'll be hearing from Francina Evans, followed by Rachel Ula, and then Diverse Wooten.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks so much for being here. Very, very thankful to just have this platform for a few moments. My name is Francina Evans. Yes, I unfortunately am in a domestic violence dispute. This is month 10. It's also a matter where I was falsely accused of obviously something I didn't do. And for these past 10 months, the first 8 of them, I was actually looked at as the assailant. And I'm going through a domestic dispute with somebody who's not mentally stable. And it is a very intricate story, which I'm not getting into detail because it is very political. I have a few lawyers. My concern is the way that I was treated prior for the first 8 months of this domestic violence case. My whole life has turned around. I had to move. I had to leave my church. There's a myriad of things that turned my life around from the seriousness of this case. And as I was trying to get certain reports from the police department, they wouldn't take certain reports because they didn't technically view it as harassment. I was really shaken by the Gabby Petito story. I'm sure you're all familiar in Wyoming, and it was a little bit too late for her because they didn't really understand the behaviors of coercive control, which is pretty much like my mantra. It's really just the voice that I have right now because I can't imagine the amount of women. You have to wait. In domestic violence, you have to wait to be hit. I was never hit in the relationship, but the mental abuse was excruciating to say the least. And these are some things that these officers didn't understand with escorts, verbally assaults with police escorts. So these are the kind of behaviors that I've exhibited. And in the face of that, because they took his side initially, I was getting called Amber Heard. They wouldn't take reports, and it wasn't until I actually hired an attorney that I actually learned that they had to take the report. So now I'm in a space where a little bit financially sunken because of this. It's very costly when you're falsely accused of something. There's nothing I can do about that now. I'm moving forward, but my concern is that, I guess my wish is there going to be, I guess from the Gabby Petito story, which is worldwide, is there any type of domestic violence from those specific officers for coercive control, things that that they are trained to recognize? This is something that I have to pay attention to. Does this girl have to get hurt in order for me to take this case seriously? Because this is something that is really affecting my entire life, and I just want to know, can that affect maybe a young woman for the future? That's really my goal in sharing this. So thank you for listening.
So I think, Ms. Evans, first of all, thank you for sharing your story with us. And it is an issue that society is just coming to grips with. And it's not enough for the NYPD to formally have rules and regulations on the books that that everyone has to take that everyone's complaint has to be taken. These are issues that need to be socialized into folks so that they know that domestic violence can come in very complicated situations that aren't what they typically think. And so I'll be honest with you, I don't know that we have an answer for you here tonight as to how this can get better, but we go back to the department and we tell them what we've heard when we're in the community, and we will point out that this is an area that they need to think about. And maybe they'll come back and tell us that this is what they're doing. And I just don't have a complete answer for you, man, but we'll try and get you some feedback and some answers.
All right. Thank you again.
Good evening. My name is Rachel. I actually work for the
Good evening, all. So my name is Rachel. I too work with True to Life. So I might have a far-fetched suggestion. After officers are held accountable, is it something possibly that could be put in the communities where could build trust with the CCRB? Maybe there's a list of who was held accountable. With any complaints, the large number of who was held accountable for that month or that year. So that then that will build community, because we are seeing the officers being held accountable as the criminals are also being held accountable. So I feel that it should be a fair game, right? If I walk into somewhere or I look something up and see that person's history, I think that we should also be privy to that information, and that should be within the communities. We want to build community with the CCRB. And I'm going to say thank you.
Thank you so much for. Thank you so much for that suggestion, and I want to have our executive director talk about the reports that we are able to reveal on a monthly basis, and some of the things that advocates once again have done in order that we can get more information on police officer behavior that we have not had in the past.
So prior to 2020 and the murder of George Floyd, there was very little information that this agency could release about individual instances of misconduct and officers who have been accused of misconduct. But because of the efforts of people like you, the state repealed Civil Rights Law 50A, which really opened up the amount of information that the CCRB can share. And so the CCRB on our website has a search function where you can put in the name of any police officer, even former police officers, and you can find out what their CCRB history is. And it tells you every complaint that's been made against them, every allegation from those complaints, and what the CCRB disposition was, what the board felt had happened, and then what the NYPD's final discipline was. I don't think it's every case in the CCRB's history. I think it only goes back to like 2005. But there is a lot of information out there. And the other thing is, as the chair said, we are trying to do more to make things transparent so that there is more information out there that explains why the CCRB did what it did and why the police department responded the way they did. And so one of the rules or changes that has gone on is now the police commissioner, if the police commissioner chooses not to follow the CCRB's recommendation, has to send a memo explaining their determination. So we put those memos on our website. That is taking a little bit longer and is not as up to date as we would like. But we are getting that information out there so you can see and you can judge whether or not the CCRB is doing its job and whether the NYPD is doing its job with regard to discipline.
Thank you.
Rachel, I just want to add, it's no way you could have known that about the website because it is that new, but you can certainly help a lot of other people by giving them that information now. And everyone here can certainly help a lot of people in our community by giving them the information that if they go to the CCRB's website, search the name of the particular officer, you can find some credible information. And again, that's largely due to the advocacy on the part of you all who are the citizens of New York City, and certainly our city council person, former city council person here in Staten Island and beyond. Thanks for that question. Wonderful.
If you don't have the name of the officer, can you go to CCRB to get the name? If you don't have the name of an officer and you want to. So if you don't know the name of an officer who mistreated you, and you would like to file a complaint against them, then you can file a complaint and we will investigate the matter and try and determine who the officers were. As I said earlier, it is very difficult when more time has gone by and there is less evidence available to identify officers. That's why it's important to file complaints quickly. We can we can investigate cases that are older, but it's just much tougher. So if you call the agency and say, I want you to tell me the name of someone who we can't tell you their name just on the phone, like we have to do an investigation. And then we can give you the results of the investigation. And then once we have the results of the investigation, you can look up the names of those people on our website.
Thank you. Yahira?
Next, we'll be hearing from Diverse Wooten, who is joining us virtually, followed by Melissa Thomas, and finally Andrew.
Diverse.
It looks like they may be rejoining. So Melissa Thomas, can you come up to speak?
Good evening. My name is Melissa Thomas. I also work for True to Life. I'm here because I'm holding a picture. I'm standing in representation of my son, who's 19, and his best friend through childhood. My son is an aerospace welder, the youngest in the state, out of the country. His best friend is going to law school. On October 29th, they went to go visit another friend of theirs that they went to school with. That family had moved to Cypress Hill, Brooklyn. My son and his friend got on the train, went into Cypress Hill. When they were there, they were walking down a dark block. They were going to a Halloween party. They were walking down a dark block that they weren't very familiar with. And they saw that there was a cop car, which is what it was. However, it was blocked out. You weren't able to see what it was because the block was so dark. So the windows were half rolled down just to see the person's nose. My son said that they kept calling him, hey, bro, hey, bro. Also, my son has no criminal background, neither does his friend. Okay? So my son said to his best friend, I think we're about to get robbed. They didn't identify themselves as cops. There was a street with cars and then a gap. So the officers were pulling into the gaps to kind of taunt them, but still did not identify who they were. So my son said to his friend, should we run? I think we're in trouble. So they were going down the block and they saw that there was a crossroad where there was traffic. So they started to walk very, very quickly. So when they got down to the block, the cop car sped up, jumped out. and finally identified themselves. They told them that they were getting pulled over because they looked like they were carrying guns. They simply had their cell phones in their pocket. My son turned and said to the officer, you know, I was scared for my life. I was going to run. The officer in return stated that, well, we would have handled that. However, we would have handled it. We would have done what we had to do. Okay, my son did receive the 3 cards of identification that he asked for from the officer. They did check their pockets with flashlights, and it was a cell phone. So after that, I was advised not to go to the 75th precinct because of work on the streets. So I'm engaged with people that have had experiences with the police precinct. I was told that I would be targeted. I drive around and work with a van that says, we risk our lives to protect yours. So you can't imagine what I would do for my own child. I went to the precinct, and when I was at the precinct, they tried to say, oh, well, here, they tried to quiet me and walk me into the hallway and show me that I could go and file a complaint. But what I was asking for was to get I wanted to get the schedule for the officers so that I can actually speak to the officers myself. I wanted to understand if there was any reason to stop them at all. Why? Was there a description sent out of 2 males that fit their description walking around with guns? I wanted to understand if there was somebody that said that there were 2 kids walking around with guns. I wanted to understand, my son has dreadlocks, they're long. He had them in 2 Mickey Mouse ears. So you can't, if there was a description of a person who was walking around with a gun, I wanted to see that. And I also wanted to see how my son was handled on the body cameras. Once I stated where I was from and who I worked for, then I received attention. And even in that moment, they told me that they weren't sure if they can give me the body cam footage. Right then and there, I understood that there's a problem. I went home and I investigated the names of the officers because I didn't realize that I had the access to that same information that you were stating. So when I looked and I found the 3 officers, the first officer had 24 allegations, 6 of them substantiated, and 9 investigated. He's making $144,000 a year to harass civilians. He has a longer rap sheet for stopping and frisking, and he has more, he's in court for abuse of power. The other 2 officers, the second one, just about the same, and the third one, just about the same. So when they were questioning my son's integrity and his story, the officer that I spoke to literally told me that, you know, they see this every day, and, you know, the officers, you know, if they saw something, they were trying to be proactive. And so what I didn't understand, and I didn't get any questions, was the why. I should be able to, if I wanted to put a bottle of ketchup in my pockets and walk down the street, I should be able to do that. I should not have to be pulled over and stopped and frisked, especially if I'm not creating any kind of a unsafe environment for the people around me. I stand here by myself because his best friend refuses to tell the parents because they are so strict, and they won't let him out the house if they know that he was targeted by the police. And I was also told by other people, part of the precincts, why was he in Cypress Hill? So this is what I have to say. My son was able to engage in the community all day long. The civilians allowed him to navigate and go through all the byways and the highways. He was able to sit and eat. He was able to engage with the community. The people that were supposed to be put in place to protect him are the ones that have him scared to not even go out. And he's 19 and he should be living his life, and he works very hard. My son is scared. It's unacceptable. I won't stand for it, and I'm going to keep on pressing until something happens. It's not enough for me to see that these officers were put on suspension. I don't know any job that you can have this type of record and still hold your job. I hope to see change. I'm not going to stop until I get it. My son could have been that story where a child was walking with a hoodie and had Skittles in his pocket and was shot. If my son would have ran, would I have had that same story? And which story would they have told why they shot my son? Would I have to wake up to, well, we had drugs on him, and because I know my child doesn't smoke, he doesn't drink, they're black. I know that that's hard for a lot of these cops to understand that being black doesn't make you a criminal. I'm tired of the stories, I'm tired of the cops, and I don't believe that they should be employed if there are this many accounts against them. There shouldn't have to be this many accounts against them to show that it's not going to be tolerated within the community. These same cops are released every night, and it could be somebody else's kid. So I've said my piece. Thank you very much.
Ms. Thomas, the members of the board. Ms. Thomas, thank you so much for your sharing of a very personal story. The members of the board had a follow-up question for you, and they wanted to know if in the end you got advice a couple of different places. Did you end up actually filing the CCRB report?
Realize I was waiting to see that I was
Mhm.
Indiana because we have my whoever has my camera question which time to get together. I didn't realize I had to do it. I could do it at any time, so I'm gonna do it now.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just add one
Yeah,
thing?
no, please
So
do.
like, I want to, make sure people understand what Ms. Thomas wanted to know, that information, like that's natural for any parent, for any person who's been in an encounter like that to want that information. It is extremely unlikely that's the NYPD will just give out that information on an informal basis to someone who comes into the precinct to ask a question. I guess it is theoretically possible, but it is not the best way to handle that kind of situation. The best way to handle that situation is to file a complaint with our agency. And we will do an investigation, and we will find out that information, and we will prepare a report. And then we will notify you of the results of our investigation. And if you want to know more about it, then you can come to us, come to the CCRB and ask us for the underlying information. You could say, I would like to see your closing report. I would like to see the body-worn camera footage. And it may take us a while, but we will provide you with that information. And so we are not just an access point for you to file a complaint and get accountability. We are also a way for you to get information. And that information can be used not only to hold the police accountable, but also you can see the work that we did and make sure that we're doing work that you feel is appropriate because we work for you. If you file a FOIL request, we will go through the work to get you a copy of body-worn camera footage, if it exists. I think we have to redact it first. And we have to, one second, sir. And we have to wait for the investigation to be closed before we can release the information. If you have a question, you should come up so we can.
Yeah, just real quick, question again. The body cam thing, like, because there was an incident of myself getting pulled over, right? And the body cam got recorded myself, and then it got sent to the superior officer. I was liaison, I spoke to the superior officer.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. No. I don't mean to be disrespectful, Mr. Gwynn, but the sign language interpreter can't hear you. So as a result, there's a group of people who can't hear you.
Thank you from the interpreters.
Apologies. So real quick, when the brother asked about the body cam and stuff, right? So there was an incident where I got pulled over, right? Our liaison that works with us here at True to Life, she spoke to their commanding officer, and then his reply back was that it didn't happen that way, and I have footage myself. So how does that work? When you say that they investigated, who is they? Their superior officers, when it goes back to the NYPD hand, when it gets out of your guys' hands and it's in their hands, and we got their superior officers saying that such and such didn't happen, the body cam, how do we get that? The people, how can we get that? That's what that brother was trying to ask. Can we get that ourselves? Can we get the mic back? Sure.
So the. Don't leave, you might need to back. Well, I wasn't asking, the guy was like behind you, who his union's gonna have words with you for taking his job, but there are kind of two parts to the question. One is, how do you get accountability for the conduct? And two, how do you get to see the body-worn camera footage? And so what we do when we get a complaint is we request the body-worn camera footage. And so when we're done with our investigation, if you request the body-worn camera footage from us, we will provide it to you. But we can't just give out the body-worn camera footage. We have to conduct an investigation, get the body-worn camera footage, and then when we get the request, we can give it out.
So, can I ask another question to that?
Can I finish real big? The problem with what, if I, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, when you are trying to handle it yourself, no one is under any obligation to be truthful to you, and no one is under any obligation to give you the information. But if you file a complaint with us, and we bring the officers down and question them, if they make false statements to us, if they make untruthful statements to us, the consequences for them can be extremely serious.
Good job.
And one of the things that has happened is that we now have jurisdiction over untruthful statements made to the CCRB. So if we get those complaints, if we find incidents of someone coming in and lying to us, we can then substantiate those allegations and prosecute those administrative cases to make sure that the officers get the discipline that they deserved for telling an untruthful statement.
What about their superior officers that may say, oh, everything was right?
I'm just
the way that the officers say. What happens next?
But let me be blunt.
There wasn't no complaint on that superior officer that's supposed to oversee this officer. How does that work?
I hear what you're saying, and I know it is frustrating, but that superior officer is under no obligation to tell you the truth. And so that's why we exist as an independent entity, so that you can come to us and we will conduct an investigation. So.
I'm sorry, they're saying that is like,
It's like the police can just lie.
well, that's what he's saying, maybe, I don't think that they have, I think they have an obligation to tell the truth, but nobody enforces that. Right. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, nobody enforces that. If there's no enforcement, it's a free ride.
So use us. So use us.
How come use us? That's it. Ridiculous. Yeah, and you're telling the truth, John. They can lie, but the truth of it is they're not allowed to lie. He's out of lie.
Yaya, is there anyone else who's supposed to make a statement?
Yes, next we'll be hearing from Diverse Wooten, who's joining us virtually, followed by Andrew.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you guys. I appreciate the time. I know it's been it feels like a long night. I've been on here since 6:30. I just wanted to say that I do appreciate the CCRB. Thanks a lot to Jahai for having conversations that kind of gave me some kind of faith in the CCRB, because I used to call it a toothless organization. So I'm hoping that you're growing some teeth. And I know a lot of this is politics, and I understand how policy works in New York City. So I just have a few suggestions that I'd like to run through. But I will say this before I start, is that, police officers should be held to the highest standard. You can't fly a plane if you're not, you don't have a pilot's license and you don't have a certain amount of experience. You can't operate on a person. So when you have the license to, and sanctioned to kill by the state, to be able to kill someone, you should be held to the highest standard. There shouldn't be no mistakes, or, you know what I'm saying? There shouldn't be any kind of wiggle room for somebody to not be held to the highest standard of character and behavior and professionalism. So with that, I'm just going to read off a few things, a few suggestions, and be on my way. And I thank you for the time. So one, I believe that automatic qualified immunity should be abolished as a policy altogether. And there should be case-by-case reviews by some form of CCRB-infused internal affairs unit that is independent of the police department. So the investigators should be completely independent of the police department, including the internal affairs. It should not be, you can't police yourselves. You can't. It just doesn't work that way. And it has been completely unsuccessful all of this time. And to continue to do it that way would just be a waste of our tax dollars. Any lawsuit against the NYPD or New York City that results in a monetary settlement should be paid for by the police pension, so that the city itself is not taking the financial hits brought on by misconduct of the PD, while they get to walk away fully, paid and funded with no real punitive impact. I think this would incentivize officers to hold each other more accountable for issues of liability. I think there should be, complete public transparency. And with regards to FOIA requests, there should be a mandate regarding the releasing of body cam footage and requested documents within 14 to 30 days without fail, or there should be an incurrence of fines for not complying per precinct. There should also be precinct and individual fines if officers fail to turn on or use their body cam equipment appropriately to capture their arrest interactions with citizens. I believe any city-funded services, i.e. the Department of Mental Health or the Mayor's Office of Domestic Violence, that would help support NYPD with regards to mental health and DV calls should be facilitated through interagency collaboration and oversight for improved outcomes for families. I believe in order to have a license to kill, it should be a standard that any gun-carrying officer sanctioned to use deadly force be held with the highest standards of excellence and accountability, and there should be no room for a rookie mistake or lack of professionalism that will result in the death of any citizen. I believe officers should be mandated to have a thorough understanding of constitutional rights and state law in order to remain in good standing as an active officer, and that standard should apply to annual psychologicals, code of conduct training, and civil rights reviews as well. I believe there should be a mandated Good Samaritan policy within the NYPD where officers are held accountable for not holding each other accountable with regards to witnessing or awareness of the violations of a citizen's rights. And I know this is pretty far-fetched, but this is my true belief, is that the police commissioner should be an elected position with a 2-year term to be up for election every 2 years, because just being appointed by the mayor leaves the police commissioner with no accountability. And like you said, it's you guys' decision, suggestion, or recommendation versus the commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you for that list of really extensive recommendations, some of which we have addressed around some of the things I've heard about body-worn cameras. Some of the others we have not. But I did want to give our executive director an opportunity to respond. I wanted to thank you and to know that we also have a record of everything that you all have said today. So I'm happy. So I'll be able to look back and read some of the comments and suggestions that you made. So thank you so much for that. And then also wanted to kind of warn you all that we are under a time boundary in this particular space. So my apologies if we're not able to continue this conversation, but we are in that time boundary. So John.
No, I was just going to remind everyone that Dr. Caroline and his staff were very kind to allow us to stay till 9. And so I know we have one more speaker, but then we're going to have to end the meeting because we can't pay people overtime today.
The city's cheap.
Mr. Andrew, I believe you were the last person with a comment.
Thank you, Diverse Dynamite.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good. And I will read our transcript. Mr. Andrew, do you have a question or not?
So a lot of the, I'm Najandelina Negron. I work with True to Life. So a lot of my participants from the Manus Harbor area, they filed complaints with the 120. The 120 has been harassing them even after they have, 2 of them have complaints with CRB. One of them got actually punched in his face in front of the building after, The other one gets harassed, him, his family, and everything. So, my question is, after the complaint goes and, you know, you guys do what you do, the officers still have their jobs, you know, some of them get paid with leave. They could legit go shoot someone and still get paid with leave. So what happens, like she was saying, they had 24, 30 complaints, 40, 50. How are they able to keep their jobs? Because, you know, like a doctor, if he malpractices on you, he's gone. Lawyer, anywhere in this world you can go and something happens to you, you're legit fired. They don't even want to think twice. Why is it that NYPD has that, I don't even know what to call it, like, it's like they're untouchable. They have their own laws, so how can we as the people try to change those laws? Because until those laws aren't changed, we won't be able to get change. It'll be like the same cycle 5, 10 years. So what can we do as the people to start putting those emotions to start changing these kind of laws so they won't feel like they're inferior? Because it's like a kid, if you ground them and you still give them the TV and let them play and stuff, they're never gonna learn their lesson. So if the police officers, nothing happens to them, they get a slap on the wrist and they get home and nothing happens, it's gonna like continue. So for us as the people, what can we do to make those changes?
So
Give us more power.
There's no policy for it. I
So-
expected this thing.
the board members are saying that you should give us more power, and there is a certain quick and easy answer as we get close to 9 o'clock that I want to just leave it at that. But one of the problems is that just because someone has 25 complaints does not mean that we were able to substantiate 25 complaints against them. And then, just because we substantiated complaints against someone does not mean that the department disciplined that officer. And so, when you start to look at individual officers as to what, and start limiting your inquiry to what was substantiated and then what the officer's discipline was, it shows the importance of what the CCRB does. And it shows the importance of filing complaints with us. Because if we are able to investigate cases quickly and make decisions on the merits and tell the department what happened and tell you what happened and whether the conduct was appropriate or not, then the decisions will be easier to understand. And the progressive discipline process will be able to function. But if we're not able to substantiate misconduct, then it is, just because an officer has complaints doesn't mean they're going to lose their job. There needs to be an investigation, and then there needs to be ability for this board to make a determination by a preponderance of the evidence that misconduct occurred.
And that's what substantiate means, because we keep using that term, but just so people know.
No.
Just so people know, substantiate means basically that we're able to look at all the evidence, and based on the evidence, we're recommending that issue actually did happen. And so there's a course of discipline that this board is recommending.
Madam Chair, would you mind if I just correct or clarify one thing I said earlier?
Sure.
I don't mean to say that I think it is appropriate for police officers to lie to people. I was just trying to explain to Mr. Quinn Mr. Gwynn, why that supervisor, it didn't make sense quite to file a complaint against him.
Just think about it as bringing in the troops. So just bring the CCRB troops when you're in these situations. Thank you so much, everyone, for your comments during this conversation. Please know that even though we will not be on Staten Island next month, that this conversation can certainly continue. Furthering on with the board meeting, do we have any old business to come before the board? Any old business to come before the board?
I'm going to save it to the next meeting.
Yes.
Do we have any new business to come before the board? All right. Hearing none, I am going to move now that we break into executive session. The agenda for executive session is the board will receive an update on litigation from the general counsel, and the executive director will provide an update on board member trainings and an update on pending personnel actions. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so moved. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.